back in better than ever, the CBB Central podcast keeps humming along into March. March the 3rd, we record this after, a really fun weekend of college basketball, Brad, and, really, really fun stuff. I was down at Loyola last night, got to cover a conference championship, which was really cool. To kind of see the emotion, they cut down nets, that they really jumped around and celebrated, and, threw on shirts, which, one could debate whether going 19-12 this year was worthy of cutting down nets and throwing on shirts, sharing the regular season title with Drake. But hey, Loyola's going to have fun, and I certainly respect that. Porter Mosier was very pleased post-game, got a chance to speak with him a little bit in a bit of a media scrum, which was an interesting experience on the court. But, it was a really good time. The place was rocking, and it was just a different energy about March basketball that you felt less yesterday at Loyola. And, always fun to be around a game like that. And so, fortunately, won't be getting out to any men's conference tournaments this year, so that was my fix. And so a lot of fun last night. How was your weekend of college basketball consumption?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like it was awesome to cover. I think kind of the funniest part of yesterday was, everyone was just looking forward to this Nevada-Utah State game, but Seton Hall Georgetown goes double overtime, and it's like the one game that CBS Sportsnet didn't give like an extra half hour to. So you didn't get to watch Utah State until like eight minutes left in the first half. And it was just, Quincy McKnight with some dagger turnovers, similar to a Sam Hauser today in a Marquette Creighton, but like top of the key, stupid, lazy pass, live ball turnovers. And that gave Georgetown the win. That's a really rough loss for Seton Hall. I think had they won that game, I think that they would have been an absolute lock, barring an extreme abnormal amount of bid thieves. Now they need one of two, and they have home Marquette, home Villanova. So that was certainly meaningful, and I think that the Nevada-Utah State game certainly lived up to expectation. Utah State played extremely well, hit a ton of threes, and now when people say oh, you can't watch Utah State and not say that this is a tournament team. Now they're pretty much in as good of a position as you could hope for.
Yeah, no, I think they're in. Watched pretty much. I think I watched starting with about 10 minutes left. My phone was dead, which was a challenge, so I was trying to keep track as best I could on the train home from Loyola as I was getting back, and I finally got back with like 10 minutes left in the game and got to watch the final 10, which was super, super good basketball. I'm like, why don't we just start there with podcast? This was a huge game, and first off, the spectrum was just rocking. Like, I was watching. Do you ever watch games and be like, I wish I was there right now? Like, I had this like really strong urge to just be in Logan, going nuts. That place was absolutely electric, and credit Craig Smith for all he's done to build it up like that. But this was a really just high quality basketball game on both ends. I thought Nevada was just unnecessarily aggressive at times. And this has been something I noticed a few times this year, and it hasn't always hurt them. And it really hurt them against the Utah State team that's so disciplined and so organized, is that Nevada's just so much more athletic than everyone they play. And they're usually veterans too, that they take a lot of risks. Like final minute when Cody Martin just fouled out trying to steal the ball on that inbounds pass where he just didn't need it, Stupid plays like that cost them so much in this ball game, where Utah State didn't get too high, didn't get too low. Nevada made stupid mistakes like that, 4 or 5 times, and I don't know if that's going to be a thing that continues to haunt them, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does.
Yeah, that play definitely stuck out. Caleb Martin takes a ton of contested kind of either long mid-range or 3-point jumpers. Even a Jordan Caroline said he was under the weather, but he had some questionable shots. It's a really tough, when you're that talented. Teams are always like you've become the hunted, right, rather than the hunter, and then you're going to throw away possessions on stupid fouls and kind of contested shots. It's kind of a similar thing with St. John's too, where it's just one contested shot, maybe that's okay, but when everyone needs to take their contested shot, and it kind of snowballs, it becomes really dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, I still think Nevada's good. I mean, I dealt with some Twitter trolls last night, play Fight Clash, what I'm going to call them, because that's just how they were acting. Like, Nevada's the most disappointing team in the country. They've beaten no one. First of all, they haven't had a chance to play anyone. It's not like they've lost a bunch of up games. Like, they've beaten everyone on their schedule, with the exception of San Diego State, who they got a chance to beat another time. I mean, like they've been good. Like, I still think they're a top 25 team. I just don't know that they're a top 15 team. And, at what point are they the same team in terms of just like competition level as they were last year, with just higher expectations? I mean, like, last year's team was less deep, but that doesn't matter because Muss is still playing 6 guys. Like, he gave Corey Henson 11 minutes out of like necessity, and then brought Zuzua and Brown off the bench when guys fouled out. I mean, Johnson's playing, Porter's playing, Thurman's playing, the Martins and Caroline are playing, and that's pretty much it. So they're not really any deeper. They shoot the ball worse, but they're better defensively, and they have veterans. Like they're just really not that much different from last year in terms of like, I think like just overall like team level. They're just a little bit like different because they play better defense and they don't shoot the ball as well.
Yeah, so basically it's what from their rotation, they traded out Lindsey Drew, Kendall Stevens, Josh Hall, and we'll throw in House Cook.
Yeah.
And we add Trey Porter, Trayshawn Thurman, Jazz Johnson, and we'll throw in Corey Henson as that 7th guy. So, I mean, Thurman's played really well whenever I watch. I know he's playing really well in the beginning, and then they went to a different look, right? Brought him off the bench. He had a big game, hit some perimeter shots yesterday too. So I mean that's a good look. But you go from a team last year that was so like perimeter oriented, right? Where you have like Jordan Caroline playing the 5, the Martins at like the 3 and the 4, and then Drew and Stevens in the backcourt. You kind of transition to a bigger team where you have like a true center in Trey Porter, and then Thurman's like a real true power forward. So really switching styles from kind of playing fast and small to like not even traditional, like even like an excessive size with Cody Martin at that lead guard spot, and that can be a really distinct advantage when playing some teams, but it also leaves you susceptible to some smaller, quicker teams. I'm not sure I would necessarily call Utah State quicker. I mean, they definitely play smaller. They really spread the court around Keita, and they have shooters across the board. So maybe that's the type of team that Nevada struggles with.
Yeah, I think the struggle with Nevada is just like they need a lot of transition easy buckets for their offense to be elite. Like, they're just flat out not going to crush you in the half court unless Cody and Caroline hit threes, which, like, the numbers say they're not going to frequently hit threes. I mean, Caroline has 1.5 a game. Cody hits basically 1 a game. Both are, like, okay percentages, but they're just not taking a ton. And then Caleb is just chucking them. Like Caleb has taken 276 threes out of 417 shots. And, like, I don't know that that's his game. I think it's just become his game because they have to. They have to shoot threes by someone, and Caleb's just being that guy, which, like, I understand. But it also just kind of stinks. Like, it doesn't create good offense. Like, I think they need to be able to push and get out and go and get open looks out of that, because otherwise the offense can stagnate. And, like, look, I think their best offense a lot of times is getting fouled. And, they got to the line 34 times last night. Problem is they fouled a lot last night too. 37 foul shots for Utah State, which just generally 71 foul shots is too many for a college basketball game. And, like, that's just kind of dumb. But, for all that was made of, Nevada lost this game, like, they lost on the road by 5 to a top 40 team, shooting the ball poorly and missing free throws. Like, could be worse, Like, I don't understand why that game was going to be the indictment on Nevada. Like, if you wanted to make, like, a Nevada indictment game, it should have been San Diego State. Because New Mexico was just like a flush. Like, they played terrible. And we'll all accept that Nevada played terrible, and against San Diego or against New Mexico and like just move on. If you want to like use a game as a like indictment game, use San Diego State, who Nevada's just better than, like very clearly like a better team. San Diego State's not a top 75 team. So if Nevada is going to shoot the ball terribly against San Diego State and lose, then you're saying, okay, they are susceptible to any team when they don't shoot the ball well, which like for the majority of the country is the case. But I mean, it's especially so for Nevada. And I think, I don't understand why Utah State was some kind of indictment on them.
Well, so looking at the stats now, I didn't realize that Utah State only had 5 threes. It felt like Miller especially hit more than one. So, I mean, they didn't even shoot the ball that well, like Utah State. And I think the reason why people are kind of indicting Nevada now is, Utah State was a bubble team. They see the other bubble teams and how much they suck, right? Like your Seton Halls, your Clemson, Georgetown, Florida, just they see those teams more often. They see that Utah State's down with them in the seed lists and kind of, that's kind of the top 40-ish area for teams there. So they kind of associate with that. And then, Nevada was seen as a top 10 team most of the year. And Nevada hasn't played anyone. And, I mean, I guess it's not their fault. I mean, USC should have been better. Arizona State should have been better. But, I mean, it is a fact, right? They're 1-1 in Quadrant 1, and that's both against Utah State. So they certainly didn't really measure themselves against top opponents. And then, kind of like we were talking about last week with Buffalo too, one loss is okay. 2 loss, people are going to start to raise their eyebrows, right? But 3 losses in a non-power conference is when you're going to start to get, a real opposition there.
Yeah. I mean, they're fine. Like, obviously they're getting in. I think they would have to lose out to even be on the bubble, which just is not going to happen. And I think they'll be fine. I think they'll probably be like around a 6 seed realistically. The thing I thought was interesting, and I was actually conversing with someone, close to the Buffalo program about this today, was, what's the difference between Buffalo and Nevada's resume? And like legitimately, Buffalo is, 2-1 against Quadrant 1, 1-1 for Nevada. Buffalo has a better net. Buffalo has a better RPI, which obviously isn't being used. Buffalo has a better strength of schedule. Their conference net is better. They're hotter than like Nevada. Like you can't make a case, honestly. I don't think there's a realistic case to be made that Buffalo doesn't have a better resume. And I think Wofford has a similar case. So, I mean, at some point, it just can't be we thought Nevada was good preseason and they've got dudes who might make the NBA. It has to be like, this is what you've done this season. And it stinks that Nevada didn't get to play more good teams. But at the same time, that's just where we are, and I think you have to seed them as such.
Right, and then kind of more of like a general point about this sort of stuff where, the guy that you were arguing with earlier saying that like the Mountain West is one of the worst conferences in America, it's just, people are going to try to bend anything that they can, bend any sort of logic. And, people complain about the quadrant system all the time. Previously, it was non-location based cutoffs, right? It was just top 50. So yes, right, you have more chances at a Quadrant 1 win than you did at a top 50 win, because there's 75 teams that you could potentially play in Quadrant 1 for road, only 50 at home. And so while you see teams like Creighton, which are like 3-10 against Quadrant 1, and Clemson's like 1-11, maybe in a previous year, a mid-major wouldn't even have that opportunity. Like you look at Wofford, that was the top 75 cutoff was huge for a conference like that, with Greensboro, Tennessee State, and Furman all kind of hovering in that Quadrant 1. But then the people that say that the quadrant system is bad, your only option is to just base it plainly on a formula, right? Like you don't want to group teams, right? You just want to be a plain formula, which to me would be a disaster, just like using net to exceed in evaluate teams, or to have a separate criteria for different levels of college basketball, be it high major, and you get kind of limbo with like the AAC, and this year the Pac-12, and then the kind of the mid-major ranks. So it's kind of like, I mean, what do you want? It's kind of
there's never going to be anything perfect. I mean, like there's net opposition popping up right now where people are like, oh, like look at the net, you know. Like I saw, like Mark Adams was tweeting about how Penn State was top 50 in net, and like Northwestern was top 100. And do you actually believe that Northwestern's a top 100 team? And I was like, honestly, like I think Northwestern stinks. I think that Chris Collins stinks. But I also think if you put Northwestern in almost any one bid league and trotted them out, who's stopping Derek Pardon and Vic Law? Like those would be Derek Pardon and Vic Law would be the two best players in, I think, 15 of the 21 bid always one bid leagues.
Of course they would. I mean, it's kind of a stupid hypothetical even, because you know if Northwestern was in the Horizon League, they wouldn't be able to get this caliber of player.
Right.
So like if you're plucking a Big Ten team and throwing them in a one bid league, they're going to do pretty well because they were able to sell recruits on the conference and in the TV and everything, you know, to get a certain caliber of recruit that Horizon League schools can't. The main thing that it just drives me crazy is people don't understand or don't want to understand that. Say there are 10 teams in the conference, right? You can be, in theory, the 10th best team in the country and come in last in your conference. Now that's an extremely unlikely scenario, but you know, going 3-15 in a high major conference, you know, maybe you're still like the 90th best team. You know, losing games to better teams, you know, means you're not as good as them. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're not like the 90th best team in the country.
Right. No, it's stupid. Like I don't understand this idea that like every single mid-major team would somehow be very good in a high major league. You know, like, and I understand like there are very good mid-major teams, and I think like Murray State would win games in the Big Ten, and UNC Greensboro would win some games in the Big Ten. But like to just like assume that they would be able to finish over, you know, 500, which is this like benchmark. And like, I know you're big against like the 500 record thing, and it would be like a mess if me and you started talking about this, because we could talk about it for the entire podcast. But like, it's so stupid. Like does anyone realistically think that Murray State is going better than like 6-14 in the Big Ten?
Haven't they not even beaten a top 100 team?
Their best win is Austin Peay.
Their best win is I mean, come on. I understand if a team, you know, doesn't have a quadrant 1 opportunity or even a quadrant 2, but when we're talking about your best win isn't even in the top 100,
it's not good.
It's just such a leap. And the fact, you know, I've seen a lot of people say, you know, I've probably said this every Sunday on the podcast. They say, you know, we need Murray State because we need to see John Morant in the tournament. Well, he wouldn't like that if I said last year we need Alabama and Oklahoma in because we need Trae Young and Colin Sexton.
I mean, look, so, I hope Ja gets in. Like, I hope they win that tournament, and I hope Belmont has a good enough resume that they get in, because I think Belmont's really good. I think Murray State would be fun. And like, I don't have a huge qualm with lining up with Temple or Indiana out of the tournament because of Murray State. But like, to say that Murray State should get an at-large bid is like, it's just wrong. I'm sorry. Like, it's just incorrect.
Yeah, like, I mean, it is completely subjective to say that people would rather see Murray State than Indiana. You know, I think maybe I would agree that I would rather see Murray State than Indiana. But you can't base a selection criteria on who you want to see. This guy, the Mike Randall guy, is like, all right, so your solution to what you say a rule is unfair to the mid-majors to make a rule that's even more unfair to the high major. Say, well, who cares if it's unfair to the high major? Well, I mean, we're trying to come up with like a legitimate solution here, and you're going with, well, who cares if it's fair? It's what I want. Like, you're being very productive right now. But I mean, this this whole idea too that these sub 500 conference teams don't ever win games. That's why I saw they never won. Well, let's look. There were 5 of them last year, right? We have Arizona State, who loses to another one in Syracuse. Both were under 500 in the league. So I mean, only one of those teams can win. All right, Syracuse wins. Syracuse goes on to make the Sweet 16. Alabama, another one, goes to the round of 32, loses to the eventual national champion, Villanova. And then Texas and Oklahoma lose in overtime to these mid-major powers that we all need to see in Nevada and URI. So are they really that much worse? Can they really not win games when literally 2 of them did last year and the other 2 went to overtime and the other one was couldn't possibly win one? So it's a very, very flawed reasoning. I understand if you would rather see Utah State than Indiana, but you can't just base a criteria on complete subjectivity.
Yeah, no, I mean, just completely agree. I mean, it just gets to like this kind of ridiculous mode, and like I understand that everyone in the bubble sucks, and I understand like that you want to see these teams get in the tournament. Like I really do, because anyone who knows me knows that I am a huge mid-major basketball guy. Like when I tweet that Indiana is probably going to get in, and people get mad at me, I'm like, dude, I don't want this any more than you do. But, like, you got to win games. Like, Furman played the 316th best non-conference schedule in the country. Just because they beat Villanova, like, that's their entire resume. They don't have any other wins.
Which doesn't even include their 3 non-D1 games, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like
316th plus 3 non-D1 games. I mean, people want to say NC State should be out for their worst non-conference schedule, and I don't disagree with that at all. But then you have to apply to Furman. And another thing that was driving me crazy, since when are Central Florida and Temple high major teams? I've seen, a lot of people being like, oh, the bubble's filled with all these high major teams that no one wants to see. We need these mid majors.
The AAC is a high major.
It's in limbo, right? But
okay, watching UCF doesn't feel like watching Furman. It feels a lot closer to watching Syracuse.
Right, but my larger point is there are going to be situations where you're going to say that UCF isn't a high major, but when it's convenient and you want to push the agenda that there's no mid-major bubble teams, suddenly Central Florida and Temple are these like blue blood powers, right? Like Indiana and Florida that get all these chances. And I mean, when was the last time that Central Florida was in the NCAA tournament? I mean, another thing I see is all these high majors. It's the same teams every year. Well, I mean, this year we have a ton of new blood teams that aren't usually in the mix. Central Florida being a prime example. Mississippi State, another one. I mean, I could go on and on.
Yeah, no, my favorite take, and I was just pulling it up, which is why I was stalling, was that someone actually tweeted to me today, Indiana would not be getting into the tournament if their name was Northwestern or if it was Vanderbilt. This was their take. Was that if you put those if you made those teams not have a brand name, then Indiana would not be getting in, but they're one of the big college basketball brands, so they have to get in. And I was like, excuse me, Vanderbilt 2 years ago went 19-16 and got into the tournament as a 9 seed.
I was about to say, hate to break it to you, but Vanderbilt started all this.
And that was in a better year for the bubble.
Because they had the number 1 strength of schedule, right? And they had a sweep over a good Florida team, if I remember correctly.
I'm trying to pull it up right now. And they also went 10-8 in the SEC. They lost. They had great wins. They lost to Bucknell, which wasn't good. And they lost to Middle Tennessee, and they lost to Dayton. So they had lost to some mid-majors. And then they lost their first they lost 4 early in the SEC, but they beat Florida on the road. They beat Iowa State in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. They won at A&M, who was good that year. They lost to Kentucky, but they beat Florida on a neutral in the SEC tournament. They beat Florida 3 times.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, didn't Casey Hill miss a layup at the buzzer, and that was that was if if that layup went in, Vanderbilt was out and it missed, and then they felt that either allowed them to move on in the SEC tournament, or that was like their kind of big regular season win. But yeah, so they started this mess.
Yeah. So I mean, we could, as I said, we could talk all day about how this is stupid and I think you agree, Brad, that like it's fun to watch Belmont and Murray State and Furman and those teams play in the NCAA tournament. Like no one's denying that, but like you have to do something to make it like clear that you deserve to be here.
Yeah, and I mean, I like my first four being 2 mid-major versus 2 high-major. I mean, this year probably Utah State, has exceeded the first 4 area. So, I mean, like right now, my proposal would be, looking at Bracketville's seed list from before Saturday's games, and I'm trying to move teams up quickly in my head appropriately. Like we would have Texas against Furman, and we would have Temple versus Seton Hall. I mean, I'm in for that.
Yeah, no, I'd be very, very, very down, and I mean that'd be a lot of fun. We'll see what happens. I mean, I hope Utah State has avoided Dayton now. I think as long as they don't lose if they win the rest of their reg season games, because I think Utah State still has, they only have one more regular season game that's at Colorado State. So assuming they win that game and then they lose to Nevada in the conference tournament, then they have no case to even be in the first 4, I don't think. Because you're talking like top 35 metrics, 2 quadrant 1 wins, two really pretty good quadrant 1 wins too in St. Mary's and Nevada. A pretty clean resume, no bad losses. I think that'd be a pretty clearly in team over a Seton Hall.
No, absolutely. And another kind of thing that was grinding my gears is people saying, "Oh, Team X is definitely one of the best 68 teams in the country." Well, that only means that you get a home game in the NIT, because I mean, looking at the seed list right now, to make that argument, I think you want to say the best 51 teams. So the 51st team on Bracketville's seed list is New Mexico State. I'd say that they're probably top 68.
Oh, yeah.
Lipscomb at 50, Belmont 49, Temple at 48. Temple being the last team in. So that's the number that you need to use. I mean, adding 18, maybe it sounds nice, but it's just inaccurate. And I don't like things like that.
This seems like a very you problem, Brad. I'm sorry.
I know. I'm very into specifics like that. And then
anyway.
just one other thing that has me worried, and I think I side with the majority on this. Please don't give us 6 seed Buffalo, 11 seed Utah State. We need some juice, right? We need 6 seed Buffalo, 11 seed Alabama, right? We need 11 seed Utah State, 6 seed Florida State, right? We need this high major versus mid major, because the mid major game that's just very deflating, because people want to see these teams pull off the upsets, at least the brand upsets, right? They can't do that, and it just kind of furthers this conspiracy theory that the committee's out to get mid majors, even though it ensures that one makes it farther. But I want to see these teams that don't get the opportunities. Let's see them get the opportunities against the big brands.
I have never been more angry in my life, and this is an exaggeration, but barely an exaggeration, than when they matched Northern Iowa and Seth Tuttle against Wyoming and Larry Nance. I was furious. That was the best game I've ever watched. I was so into it.
And how good was, I think this was the next year, Northern Iowa and Texas, where that's Jesperson hits the half court buzzer beater,
and then the next game they play A&M. Yeah,
A&M.
Great game.
So
great weekend.
Those are the kind of matchups we need.
The St. Joe's versus Cincinnati 8-9 game. The winner played Oregon. It's 2013.
DeAndre Bembry.
Game. Yes, Bembry. There was 3 A-10 players playing for the Hawks today. B.J. Johnson, Jalen Adams, and DeAndre Bembry all played for the Hawks today.
Yeah, wow.
I didn't know B.J. Johnson made the league.
Yeah, that was just recently. But before they signed B.J. Johnson to a 10-day, they had Jordan Seibert.
They love the A10, man.
They love the A10. And then trying to think, just a quick scan in my head, any more A10. No, let's see.
Nope. There was the VCU St. Mary's game that I was furious about. That was like a 7-10.
I remember that game. There was also I feel like VCU had someone else in the first round too.
VCU Stephen F. Austin, the year Stephen F. Austin beat him on the 4-point play.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's one game I'm trying to remember because I remember I had to go to lunch and I was following on my phone. It was like a noonish tip on a Friday. I think 3 years ago, maybe VCU. I think got another mid-major.
VCU always draws mid-majors. It's annoying.
Well, hopefully not this year. Hopefully they don't get Wofford. Hopefully they get like Auburn.
Oh yeah, the VCU Wofford 8-9 game is going to be a killer
because it doesn't have any buzz to the casual fan. And I mean, even for me, I mean, like if it's like Wofford and a VCU, or we could have Auburn and Syracuse. I think I'm watching Auburn and Syracuse. I mean,
I'm watching VCU Wofford, but I'm watching like a 4-13 until it's not close before I watch VCU Wofford. That's my watching strategy. Is I watch like the biggest upset that is possible until it's no longer possible.
Yeah, I mean,
this is how I approach the games.
With the staggered starts, you don't have to watch a bad game in the first round because you can tell, all right, like the noon tip just finished, right? But the 12:30 tip is a blowout, so I'm going right to the 1:15,
Right. Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, I love it. It's the best 2 days of the year, like no doubt in my mind. So excited for them. And the best part is this year, those first 2 days, I have no class. I have finished finals on the Wednesday, and then I have that's like the start of my spring break. And so I have Thursday and Friday to do nothing. It's going to be the best 2 days of like my entire year. We're excited.
I had a spring break for that last year, and it was amazing. I moved my chair right in front of the TV, and I sat there for 2 days. But then there's one other kind of tournament thing I wanted to bring up. I remember this was 3 years ago, I think. First round game versus Iowa and Temple. All right, two teams going into the tournament where I was convinced that I was going to pick both of them to lose their first round matchup, but they were matched up against each other. Who do you think would be this year's Iowa Temple? There's two teams that you're kind of squatting on the take that they're going to lose in the first round, but then they're going to end up playing each other.
Problem is, like, it's so bubbly. Like there's so many teams I'm still like not in on. Like, for instance, I was watching St. John's today, and I was like, they're going to get in, and it's really going to be matchup dependent. Like, if St. John gets matched up with any team that has any toughness and physicality, they will lose. Like, that's what happens against DePaul. That would happen against like Providence. Like so I think, for example, that's like a good one. I think I am like definitely picking against Florida if they get in. I think they're one of the teams that I'm just like, no way, they're not winning a game. I think Oklahoma as well is another team that I'm just like, they're going to be in, and like no matter what, not picking them.
For me, the one with the flashing red light is TCU.
Oh, fair one.
That team just sucks. I mean, once Jalen Fisher went out, they did the same thing last year, where, I mean, in the resume was much better last year. I think went with Kenrich Williams and I'm forgetting who they're. Brad Zianski. I mean, they had more talent to kind of keep their heads above water. But now, I mean, this team is just a sitting duck. And I mean, they didn't do anything in the non-conference. So I mean, they might not even make it. But going into Saturday, Bracketville had him on the 10 line. So for me, that would be like a Louisville TCU matchup. It's like, oh my God. Two teams that are just, totally imploding.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Louisville, hopefully that win against Notre Dame today helped turn it around. But I mean, I don't think so. I think they're just kind of screwed. Let's talk about a few of these games, Brad, before we get into conference tournament picks, because we just kind of rambled, which has been a lot of fun. And I'm sure the listeners love it. But I think we do have a few games we wanted to touch on. I think Indiana, who we just kind of touched on tangentially, beating Michigan State is just really big. Just kind of my quick take was that Indiana's playing really hard. Like, they're competing every night for RG. And, regardless of, like, they're a flawed basketball team. Sure, they don't have a lot of shooting. Devontae Green makes a huge difference for this group. Like, just night and day. Just having another guy who can get a bucket. Like, him and El Durham can be, like a solid two guard. I thought Finney was solid. And then, obviously, what can you say about Justin Smith, who was, just absolutely terrific. And they just dug in. They fought. They forced some turnovers. They maybe played when it mattered, and that's just like a massive win for them, and really puts them in the bubble picture again, and also kind of shows Michigan State's vulnerability. That just team doesn't look the way they did when they had Nick Ward out there. No,
I mean absolutely. I mean Justin Smith was so huge on the offensive glass too. I mean that was a big part to kind of shorten the game there. And then Romeo Langford, I guess he was overrated. I think that's a safe thing to say, but he's still a very good player. One the other day, finally taken to the rim on the last possession instead of bricking the 3-pointer. But all Indiana has to do is what they have: Illinois and then Northwestern.
Indiana? No, they have Illinois and Rutgers.
Illinois and Rutgers. They probably need both to keep their record above water. But they've really tightened that rotation. They're playing like 7 guys, and I think De'Ron Davis only played like 10 minutes of the night. They have a distinct style, and if they keep playing hard, it could be a tough matchup for some teams, and they need these younger guards to step forward and start hitting some shots.
Yeah. So just quickly on Indiana's bubble hopes. I am on the record saying they get in with 1 win in their next 2 games, and that's all they need to do. They could even lose to Northwestern in the first game of the Big Ten tournament, and they would get in, I think. They're not losing to Northwestern. Like, if they win 1 game and then they beat Northwestern, I think they're in, like, no doubt. Like, I would be very surprised if they don't get in, even with 15 losses. Well, actually, they 16 losses. I still think they'd get in.
So is there actually like an explicit rule that you have to be over 500 with an overall record to be considered?
Yes, that is a rule for NCAA and NIT postseason.
And it's over 500 or can it be 500?
Just 500.
500. And they're currently one above?
One above. So if they lose the next 2, they'd finish under 500. They have to win 2 in the Big Ten tournament. Which if they're
just to get to 500, yeah,
right, which would be tough. I mean, the thing is, if they win 1 of the next 2, there's a somewhat solid chance that they'll jump and not play the first day of the Big Ten tournament. Because if they win both, they're not playing on day 1 and playing Northwestern. I think ideally they want to just play Northwestern and beat them. Although they could also just not play Northwestern and lose in the first game, and it wouldn't be a bad loss if they're playing like an 8-9 game against Ohio State or something like that. But I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think they're fine.
Do you think that we should take a timeout here in terms of discussing Saturday's games and kind of move on to saying who we think are going to be the bid thieves and how many bid thieves? Because there's potential for a lot, and it could wipe out as many as like 7 spots of the bubble if like the maximum realistic bid thieving happens.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, we can first just kind of go through the conference tournaments that have the potential to bid thief. So Ohio Valley could be a bid thief because Belmont could get in at large.
But if there were too many bid thieves, then Belmont would certainly be on the side of teams that would be getting cut.
Right. But they're a team. They're a team you throw into the mix in the at-large conversation if they lose their conference tournament.
Yeah.
But they're penciled in most brackets right now. Big South, no potential bid thief. No one's getting an at-large. ASUN, very similar to OVC, where Lipscomb would be on the bubble, but it would depend on the number of bid thieves. Missouri Valley, 1-bid league. No one's getting in. Who doesn't win the tournament? SoCon. This is where it gets interesting because Wofford is a lock. Furman's a bubble team. So Furman could lock themselves in, or UNC Greensboro, ETSU, or someone else could win and leave potentially two, like Wofford in. So that's 1 bid thief, and then a potential 3rd bid for the league if Furman got it.
Right. So is Furman the 4 seed?
Furman is the 3, which means they play UNCG, which is not as good for them, honestly.
Right, because if they were the 4 in that semifinal, they would get Wofford. Maybe if they beat Wofford on a neutral and then lose in the final to Greensboro, maybe it could be a 3-bid SoCon.
Yes, that's the ideal, but it's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's not impossible that Furman could go to the final. Wofford could lose to ETSU, and ETSU wins the league, and then Furman gets in by adding like a Q2 over UNCG.
Okay.
It's not impossible.
The thing that's really working against these, even like a Temple and like a Utah State, is that there's so limited amount of opportunities to move up.
Right.
Like even like a VCU, like you're treading water by winning. Even a conference like the Big East, wins are kind of moving you forward. Big 12 certainly. While as these mid-major, you just have to win to tread water. Yeah. So Furman in a vacuum maybe could get there. But if Georgetown and Xavier right now are like in the first 4 out and they play each other in the first round of the Big East tournament, one of those teams is probably going to jump ahead of Furman, just like the winner.
In fairness, UNC Greensboro on a neutral would be better in net than either of those wins.
Right, but okay.
I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think like that is a fair point to make. That the SoCon is pretty good. Like winning that semifinal game for Furman isn't it's like a 130 game. It's a 65 game.
Very true.
So it helps a little.
Yeah.
So some of the other leagues, this is just the first week because I'm just looking at the Jerome right now, and I'll pull the other ones in a sec. So we said SoCon, is at worst a 1-bid league, at best a 3-bid league, likely a 2-bid league. CAA, 1-bid league. Hofstra's not getting out large. Sorry. AA MAC, 1-bid league, no doubt. 16-seed league. West Coast Conference, guaranteed Gonzaga. Maybe St. Mary's. We'll consider them a bubble team, and then potential bid stealers.
Okay.
I mean, St. Mary's a bubble team is like I don't get it, but I mean Lenardi has them around, so.
Yeah, I don't think that St. Mary's will get in. I mean, both Gonzaga and Wofford, ran through their leagues enough that maybe they just run through the conference tournament too.
It's very possible, but it's a potential bid stealer.
It is.
And then Summit League, no bid stealer from there. Horizon League, no bid stealer. Northeast Conference, no chance. Patriot League, no chance. America East, no chance. So that's the first weekend of conference tournaments. Let me just go through the rest. A10, VCU we think is pretty safe right now. Everyone else probably needs to win the conference tournament, I think. So definitely bid stealer potential now that Dayton lost to URI.
Yeah, I think so far VCU is the most probable out of the bid thieving scenarios to lose. I think I would take the field over VCU more likely than I would take the field over Wofford or the Zags.
Okay, I'll buy that. I think St. Bonaventure might win that conference tournament. By the way, that's just like a random note. Like I'm writing up my like conference tournament manifesto where I pick every single conference tournament that I submit tomorrow. Which is kind of tough because I don't have brackets for half of them, but I just kind of like who's hot. And St. Bonaventure might pick in the A10. So breaking news on that one. The American, could that be a bid stealer? Memphis at home?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's talking about Memphis at home, but that's such a have-not league.
True.
I mean, not as much as like the WCC and the SoCon, but I think I would be surprised if one of the top 4 plus Memphis didn't win that league. So I guess Memphis being at home has the best shot there, but like Wichita State, they're playing better, but I don't think so.
It's no one but Memphis.
Florida come back to earth. SMU stinks. UConn stinks. I mean,
the only bid stealer is like if Temple were to do it and then lock themselves in, or if Memphis does it on their home court and they play a lot better at home. So
yeah,
I mean that's that. Big, let's just see. Big Sky, no way. Big East, do we consider that a chance?
Yeah,
Xavier.
I would. I mean, Villanova has slipped up. They're so dependent on that 3-point shot when it's not falling, especially in the second half. So, I mean, they're really liable. And then, I mean, Marquette just dropped a home game to Creighton today. Creighton has more talent than the resume indicates, so they've been banged up a little bit. I mean, both those teams I think would be susceptible. And as to who could do the stealing, I mean, pretty much anybody. I mean, everyone's so closely grouped together. I mean, Providence probably doesn't have the offense. DePaul's probably down there with Providence, and I think I had a group Butler in the bottom 3 with them, but anyone else I'd give a good shot to.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Just kind of rolling through here. Big Ten, no way. Big West, no way. Conference USA, no. There's no team in there that's like getting that large. Old Dominion would be like a team that I'm not surprised would not be stunned if they started popping into like next 4 outs because they have like a road win at Syracuse, top 70-ish net, but they're not getting in without they're just not getting a bid. Ivy, 1 bid league, no matter what. Single AMAC, that's a clear 1 bid like threat or to be a second bid with Buffalo if they were to lose, and they've lost already 2 games, so it's not like it's impossible. Mountain West, San Diego State could steal a bid. Anyone could other than Utah State and Nevada. So that's a possibility. SEC, do we think of an SEC team that could steal one?
No. Like,
yeah,
Arkansas, no. Missouri. AJ Lawson's now hurt for South Carolina, so they're pretty much done there.
Southland's a 1 bid. SWAC's a 1 bid. Pac-12.
Oh, yeah.
That's a very clear one.
I mean, similar to the Big East, I mean, that whole conference in the middle is all like 8 and 9, 9 and 9. I mean, that's going to be really interesting just to see how the seeding plays out. And then Washington, certainly susceptible. They lost to Cal. They only beat Stanford by 1 today on the road. Then Arizona State.
That game, they're sweating.
Yeah, Arizona State, is super talented, but they just can't put things together. And then, I mean, Oregon State's probably the next best. I mean, there's just so much unknown there. Yeah,
I mean, at this point, then we were talking like 8 or so leagues that could be bid stealers then.
And I think probably last year, I think that there were 2, right? There was Davidson and San Diego State.
Yeah.
This year, I'll say that the single A MAC, the A10, both of those, and then
Pac-12.
Yeah, I'll go with Pac-12. I'll go with 3.
Yeah, so I think I buy that. I mean, that'll shrink the bubble a little bit, but I mean, it's gonna be interesting. I think.
Yeah.
A lot of these tournaments are gonna be fun and really help us with this bubble and clear out some spots. But unfortunately, I think those are probably gonna be taken from mid-major hands. Like it's not gonna bounce St. John's. I think it's gonna bounce like Furman.
Yeah.
So who knows? Any other big action from yesterday before we just pick our conference tournaments? Because I'm gonna have some fun picking some mid-major leagues.
I mean, Kansas was on the ropes against a shorthanded but competitive Oklahoma State team.
Yep.
I kind of like them for next year. Oklahoma State. They bring back a bunch of guys, and then they had Isaiah Todd on an official visit. He's a top 20-ish player who's going to reclassify. He's like I think he's like an Ivan Rabb type of player. So, I mean, he could be an interesting fit if they get him. I think Kentucky thinks that they're going to get him. But, I mean, if McGriff's back, Waters back, likely back at the starting point guard, you have Curtis Jones. I mean, they have some talented guys. They just need to get a little older, and they should have a lot more depth next year with a very strong recruiting class.
Yeah, they just don't have the talent right now, and the recruiting class will help. I mean, obviously, like losing Weathers was like a big piece. Like they weren't overly talented to begin with, and then lost Weathers, who was like one of their better players. The grad transfer from USC Upstate, Cunningham, left. He was like someone they thought could play, so that's really tough. But I think they'll get back. Tennessee over Kentucky, big. I mean, I feel like both games have been less to do in this series this year. Kentucky and Tennessee have been less to do about like which team played better and which team was just like amped to play. Like Kentucky just came out ready to kill when they played them at Rupp, and then Tennessee came out ready to kill against Kentucky at Thompson Bowling yesterday. So like, I mean, I don't know. I didn't really have any takeaway other than like Tennessee was amped.
Yeah, I mean, Grant Williams, had some really nice plays in that game. Schofield had some, really, really aggressive takes. I mean, I think he just hit the nail on the head. That they just seemed really locked in. I mean, Jordan Bone was good. I mean, they just down the line. I mean, kind of what I was thinking too with Oklahoma State. Tennessee's a team that took their lumps, right? Where they were playing Jordan Bone as a freshman as starting point guard. Guys like Turner, Williams, Schofield. These guys had to lose first before they could win. And I think, can either go two ways, where a team's bad and they bring everybody back and they're still bad, or, they can really make that next step. And I think, getting that experience and kind of cutting their teeth when they were lower classmen, I don't know what the word is. Underclassmen, there you go. Really, really paid dividends. And I think that experience is going to take them far.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Two teams that locked themselves into the field yesterday, in my mind. Auburn got rid of any doubt by beating Mississippi State at home. That's just like one more good win and another feather in their cap that'll push them in, I think. And then the bigger one, UCF at Houston. I mean, that place was rocking, and UCF to go in that environment and win, finally lock themselves in. I thought Colin Smith was tremendous. Taco did a really nice job. The refs didn't really know how to officiate Taco, which was frustrating. And they made plays defensively. I still like Houston a lot. I mean, DeJon Jarreau is making plays. Nate Hinton gives them minutes, and I mean, Davis and Robinson and Brooks are really good. So I mean, I didn't like come away from that game and be like Houston's bad. I was just like, yeah, UCF's just a tournament team that I've seen a lot that just haven't been able to close the deal. Finally close the deal.
Yeah, I think Houston's probably closer to like top 15, which is obviously still very good. Jarreau made some tremendous passes in this game, especially driving baseline, but he's very sloppy with the ball. He had a few crucial turnovers late. But yeah, I mean, the thing about they can't officiate tackle fall, where like there was a play in at the very start of the game where he gets the ball and like Galen Robinson just like grabs him, and then it's like a flagrant foul, and then like the very next play he like steps through and then like hits someone with an elbow, and then they go to the monitor. It's just a whole mess. But Central Florida, about Colin Smith, I was surprised that he's been that starting four-man. I mean, he was a starting center for I think a decent George Washington team as a freshman. But they play him with Taco Fall, and he was hitting some mid-range jumpers. He was active, and just gives Central Florida even more size in that zone.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really impressive, and I liked him out of when he transferred out of GW. He was one of those guys where like he's big and can shoot a little bit, and if he gets a year under in a weight room, he could be special. So definitely good to see him thriving. Quick result that I thought was interesting: Rutgers all over Iowa in Iowa City. Obviously, Iowa without Fran McCaffrey, who was suspended after some choice words to an official. I think Rutgers continues to impress me. They fight. Their offense is getting a lot better every game. I mean, Mathis and Harper are really good, and McConnell's good, and I mean Baker's doing his thing. I think Miles Johnston's going to be a really nice player in the Big Ten at some point in his career. I mean, like that's a nice core that they're building, and like they're going to get him those four back. They're going to get Omarui back. They're going to get Geo Baker back, and they're going to add like Mulcahy. from Gil St. Bernard in New Jersey. He's a really good pure passer who will let Gio score a little more. And they'll add Jacob Young, who can score the ball off the bench from Texas. They'll add maybe a grad transfer, and this team could be an NCAA tournament team next year. And Iowa starting to fall off a cliff here, hammered by Ohio State, hammered by Rutgers. If you remember, every year that Fran McCaffrey's had a good team, he's kind of fallen off a cliff at one point at the end of the season. Like there was that team that was really good, and then they went within the first four because they lost so many games down the stretch. And this is kind of happening again, where these 2 games in a row. But if you look back before that, like overtime win over Indiana at home, 1 point loss to Maryland at home, then the buzzer beater against Northwestern and Rutgers. If they don't get those 2 buzzer beaters, this team's in free fall. Just absolute free fall.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is a team, I didn't expect them to be this good in the preseason. It seems like they're kind of reverting to the mean a little bit, but Jordan Bohannon is really good, and then Garza and Cook form one of the best front courts. So I am optimistic that they will kind of right the ship here a little bit, but certainly not a great week, and it looks like they need Fran McCaffrey a little more than people expected. And in terms of Rutgers, I mean, all I wanted for Rutgers was to show some tangible improvement. I'm not a fan of saying that they improved because they changed the culture, but I mean, they have 6 wins already? I mean, they've showed some real tangible progress, and they should be at least in the at-large conversation next year if all the important pieces stick around.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're gonna be good, and they needed to show some progress. I thought they showed progress because they were competing in games they didn't compete in the past, but this is the best season for Rutgers basketball in 10 years, right? I mean, he was just Pike was working against such a talent deficit, and as you see him start to get talent that's somewhat close to competitive, I mean, he's doing it. This is their best season since Gary Waters went 19-14 in 2006. Mike Rice, went 15-16 one year. This team might finish over 500. I mean, give Steve Peichel in the best year of the Big Ten in quite some time an unbelievable amount of credit, because as the talent gap gets closer, they get closer, and the talent gap's going to continue to shrink because he's recruiting at a solid level. So, I'm all in on Rutgers. Shout out to them and shout out to Pike. Any other games we wanted to touch on? Because there's a few that are kind of noteworthy, like Gonzaga handles St. Mary's. Georgia over Florida is a really just strange loss for Florida.
Ohio State really needs Caleb Weston back.
Oh yeah,
Purdue took it to him.
That was ugly. I mean, you got to have a problem when your best player is getting suspended in February. Kerwin Roach, same thing. If your best player is getting popped, that is not a good sign.
No, absolutely not. And it's 2 teams that really needed to be putting their best foot forward at this point, right? Texas is now has so many losses that they're in last 4 ends. Ohio State at one point was seen as a top 10 team. Now they're low 30s, early 40s.
Number 1 in the first net, baby.
And they still have some work to do, I think, to lock it in. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. No, it was an exciting day. A lot of fun stuff that went on, and I had a lot of fun just watching games. Got to see a game in person, which is always a good time. And so, it was a lot to take in, and no one really fully. I thought other than UCF, I didn't think anything happened that was overly revelatory. But it was enough to keep things pretty interesting and keep us engaged on these bubble teams going into Champ Week. Anything else before we do these picks?
Nope, I'm ready.
All right, we're going to go in order of the Jerome ballot. We've got 13 to pick for week 1. We'll pick the other 18 week 2, or 19, excuse me. So let's start Ohio Valley. All the talk will be Belmont and Murray State, 2 rivals who have great teams, 24-4 Belmont versus John Morant and Murray State. I'm going to have a really tough time picking against Belmont. One thing I will note, Murray State used to have to go into Nashville to play this conference tournament, which is, Belmont's home. Belmont would have pro-Belmont crowds. This year, just like last year, it's in Evansville, Indiana, which is a much more favorable trip for Murray State fans to the point where they can like take over that arena. So I think it becomes a very interesting discussion of home court advantage. I am tempted by Jacksonville State. I'm tempted by Austin Peay, kind of seeing value, but I'm going to roll here with with Murray State, and I think they get it done.
Who won this league last year? Was that Jacksonville State last year, or was that 2 years ago?
It was Murray.
Murray last year, and they played Auburn? No, they played
West Virginia.
West Virginia, that's right.
Yeah, no, West Virginia.
We did this last week, too. But, all right, Ohio Valley, I'm going with Belmont. Team that I don't know if a lot of people realize they've never won a tournament game. Is that right?
I think so.
There's perennial one and done. I'm not sure if they have, like a better roster than normal this year. I mean, they have a great player in Dylan Windler.
NBA guy.
What was that?
He's an NBA guy, Dylan Windler.
Oh yeah, and I mean they've had a couple before, right? They had Ian Clark, and then they had another shooter alongside Clark, who I can't remember his name. And they had, Evan Bradslow's an NBA guy, but he was like a really unique kind of small ball five.
Do you remember that game? We've had a lot of reminiscing on this podcast, but I really have to. The Cameron Payne sophomore year, they're playing Belmont, and Belmont had that like lefty white guy who was just chucking threes.
Taylor Barnett.
Yes. And he killed Murray, and I was so torn up because I was a huge Cameron Payne fan, and that guy just had so much juice. Like I loved Cam Payne. Like he turned out to suck in the NBA, but like that dude had some juice in college. Like he had some swagger. He balled. I love that kid.
Yeah, I actually knew that he was going to be a bust because his Draft Express weakness video was like scarily similar to my skill set. Like left-handed, he could take one dribble with his right hand and then has to throw up like a left-handed floater from the free throw line. So I really related. But yeah, I remember watching that game. Ohio Valley is always one of my favorite conference tournaments because it's the first one, and it's usually up against Duke UNC in terms of time slot. I think this year it's up against Michigan State, but I mean it's always a competitive game. To not push us any farther, I am picking Belmont here. The number one seed, but I mean I think more of these conference championships should be standalone. I know the next Saturday, like the day before Selection Sunday, there's a lot of overlap there. And I want to watch as many as possible, but I'll go with Belmont here. Super well coached with Rick Bird. They've made I think 6 or 7 times since being in D1. I think that they'll get there again this year.
All right, let's move on. Big South. This one, Radford won a few games this year against up teams. They beat Notre Dame. They beat Texas. They're very good, well-coached group. I'm rolling with Campbell, Chris Clemens, the man, the myth, the legend. I'll still remember him putting up 51 on UNC Asheville on like one of those Friday afternoon, like first Friday of conference tournaments that like I was just sitting at home after school watching the game and like just so excited that the game was actually close. A lot of those games we blow out. It's like a 2-7 in the Big South, and you're just all in. I was all in on that game. I'm hoping Chris Clemens get to the tournament. One team I would love to see win this tournament that probably won't is Presbyterian. It's their first winning season in program history. Shout out Dustin Kern. So I'm rolling with Campbell, but I'm rooting for Presbyterian. Go Blue Hose.
I also picked Campbell. Basically they just beat Radford, and Radford was I think the consensus favorite coming into the year. They returned almost everybody from last year, if not anyone, and last year's team won a first 4 game in that 16 round. But I'm going also with the explosive Chris Clemens and Campbell. I know a lot of people are rooting for him to get his first tournament berth. And I think they certainly have their best shot this year.
I just want everything in my being wants to see Chris Clemens put up 45 on Duke and lose like 106-51. Like nothing would make me happier. Anyway, ASUN, very important tournament. We talked about it as a potential bid thief. I think this one's very interesting, really just between Liberty and Lipscomb. NGIT's had some nice moments, but it's really just those two. I think I'm going to trust Lipscomb here. One of those teams I'm worried might have peaked a little too early, but is really, really just well coached. They play much better defense than they have in the past. Can really get going from the outside. They can space you out. They have shooters. I think this is a very good basketball team. I'm taking Lipscomb.
I also went with Lipscomb. I think if they are maybe like a full tier above Liberty, but I think if they are a better and a more talented team. But I also wanted to bring up how disappointing Florida Gulf Coast was this year. I mean, this was a roster that once they got Hanif Cheatham eligible for the full season, I thought this would be a team at the top of the A-Sun. He gets hurt like 10 games in, I think, and even with all these kind of former high major guys, they didn't really gel. The high major guys didn't really pan out, and they were middle of the pack A-Sun team.
Yeah, the high major guys didn't play as well as I thought. Their defense has been terrible. First year coach in Michael Fly, which makes things a little more challenging. But shout out to Cedric Casimir, the Iona grad transfer, who's getting some good minutes there, and just a really good kid that I got a chance to watch a lot. So glad he's balling, even though the Eagles are not.
Right, because you have Hanif Cheatham was at Marquette, De Niro Mercurius, I think, was at South Florida.
Yeah.
Troy Baxter was UNLV. Brady Ernst was Xavier briefly. I know Caleb Cato was like a really highly rated late stock riser who decommitted from Milwaukee, I think, when they lost Laval Jordan, but don't quote me on that. And then I think prep school and then went to Florida Gulf Coast. And then Ricky Doyle was at Michigan.
Yeah.
So that's a lot.
Yeah, that was their whole recruiting pitch under Dooley. Was like they were like a last chance U type spot. So hasn't worked out this year. We'll see if they can flip it. Let's go on to the Valley, Missouri Valley, headed to Arch Madness in St. Louis, which will be a very fun event. I'm always excited about that one. Unfortunately, not making the trip. I was gonna either do that or go home for the MAC tournament. Then I decided I would actually go with Northwestern women's basketball, the Big Ten tournament. So I'll be there in Indianapolis if anyone wants to say hello. In the Valley, though, I don't trust anyone in this league. Like, there's not one team that I have a significant amount of trust in. I'm just going to kind of go with the team I've seen, and that's Loyola. They're playing a lot better. At least they played a lot better against Bradley than I've seen them play earlier in the season. Krutwig, Towns, Custer is still a nice trio. They got Williamson back, which is really big because he can score the ball and just play defense, make some outside shots, which is just really important for them because they weren't super deep. Porter Mosher's talked about the pressure they faced all year, and so to be able to kind of sit back and play single elimination basketball, I think will help them, honestly, with the pressure. I'll roll with the Ramblers.
Yeah, once I saw that Williamson was back, I didn't realize he was back until I saw your tweet of the starting lineup the other day. I'm going with Loyola as well, and I'm glad that they got the 1 seed, right?
Yeah, you have the 1, so they get the
so they lose. We'll have at least this new big mid-major brand in the NIT at worst, but I think that they can, now that they're fully healthy, or at least as healthy as the team's going to be in March. I think they certainly have more talent than the other teams. I mean, you could make an argument for Illinois State, who a lot of people had as an at-large in the preseason, but they're a middle of the pack Valley team. So
they just got to dodge Missouri State, who beat them by a combined 39 points in 2 meetings.
And I thought that Dana Ford did a really nice job at Tennessee State. That's one where it's very sexy to take a new coach who just went to the NCAA tournament, but someone who shows improvement and gets strong players on a team that can make the top half of their league. Maybe they don't win a regular season or a postseason conference championship, but they're still worthy to look at for new hire, and he's shown very, very strong start. They have a few transfers coming in too, so that's a program headed in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very high on Missouri State long term. I think Dana's going to do a great job out there. SoCon, Big Four in that league are really good, as good as I think a top four as any mid-major league in the country. I just don't think Wofford loses. I think they've been so good. They've managed expectations. They've managed getting everyone's best shot. I think they win this one in Asheville and take that conference tournament.
Did you see the other day that I'm pretty sure it was Aaron Torres. It was definitely Aaron Torres, but I'm pretty sure these were the two teams that he singled out in his tweet. It was just like UNCG with like a ton of like greater than signs, Oklahoma. It's like, well, with the implication that UNCG wouldn't have a sub 500 record in the Big 12, but I mean they did lose to Wofford twice by 30, and Oklahoma beat Wofford. But I mean, it's just funny that he singled those teams out. But I also take Wofford 18-0. You know, just mention that they pound UNCG, a team that they could see in the championship. Pretty reasonably. I think that this is one of the more clear-cut picks, which means that they'll probably lose in the to the 8th seed in the first round.
Been there. CAA, perfect example of a team that peaked too early. Hofstra, they were like killing it in January. It looked like a team that was going to go to the Sweet 16. They've fallen off a bit defensively. That was their big improvement from years past. Joe Mihalik has always struggled to coach defense. This year they were really solid to start the year. They've really regressed over the last 8 games or so, which is really brought them back to the pack. They still have a great shot with an NBA guard, Justin Roy Foreman, and Eli Pemberton's really good. But I'm going to roll with Northeastern. He's been playing really good basketball of late. Vasa Pushitsa is really good. They were right there last year. They tasted it and then blew that big lead to Charleston, who will also be in the mix. But I'm rolling with Northeastern, really good coach, and Bill Cohen.
I also went Northeastern. You mentioned that Puskas is back now, right? And then Hofstra's, even when they're winning, it's getting a little closer. Certainly than it was earlier in the season. Northeastern has the momentum, experienced coach, pretty experienced team as well. I'm going with them as well.
Yes. Mac, double A Mac. I'm going to present this one, Brad, in the something's got to give category. So I obviously want to pick Siena. I don't think I'm going to pick them just for the purposes of this discussion, because I mean, there's a justification for picking Siena, but like it's not like I don't need to pick them, and so I'm going to just pick the team I think is going to win it. My pick's Quinnipiac. Cameron Young is one of the best scorers in the country. Has averaged 26 a game in MAC play. He's been terrific. But here's the interesting thing. So Iona's won the last 3 conference tournaments, so they've 3-peated. They could 4-peat. But they've won the last 3 as the one seed. They've never been the 1 seed and won the tournament under Tim Cluse. In the MAC, no team since Siena in 2010 has won it as the 1 seed. That is an unbelievable statistic. Like, what are the odds that the 1 seed 8 years in a row doesn't win a 1-bid league tournament? And you had some strong 1 seeds. You had like Iona teams that could have been 13 seeds. You had Monmouth teams that were legit at-large contenders that lost both times. Then you
last year.
Ryder last year was very good. They blew it against St. Peter's in the first round. Like, the MAC has been weird. So something got to give, because Iona's the 1 seed. They have a streak, and the 1 seed has a streak. I'm picking Quinnipiac. I think Quinnipiac good, but Siena on their home court is going to be dangerous. Jalen Pickett and Evan Fisher. I think even like a Canisius with Tacom Olsen has a shot. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm going with Ryder. I mean, Ryder, come on. What happened this year? You made me look like an idiot, but they're going to figure it out now.
They're mentally weak, Brad. I'm telling you.
After 30 games, they've figured it out. They beat the powerhouse Marist Red Foxes today.
Ryder Siena, Saturday night, 9:30 Eastern, the Times Union Center. Be there or be square.
Is that the first round game?
As a quarterfinal, yeah.
I didn't see the Metro bracket yet.
Yeah, I only got
is
one.
Is that 4-5 or is that?
It's a 4-5. So the winner gets Iona, or the winner, or either Iona or Marist probably. So it's gonna be Iona, and we'll see if Siena can make a run at their home court. I mean, that would be so cool. It's really funny. 4-5 game is the team picked first in the league and the team picked last in the league preseason. So
that is. All right, next to the West Coast.
Yeah, West Coast, Gonzaga for me, no doubt. I mean, they're just so head and shoulders. Like, they haven't had too much trouble with any of the good teams on the road, even. Like San Francisco gave them a nice little push. St. Mary's gave them like 30 minutes of good basketball. Loyola Marymount gave them like 30 minutes of good basketball, but just no one is even like close. Gonzaga easy.
And then file this in your what if category with Boston College and Penn State and Miami. If Elijah Bryant comes back to BYU, I mean, maybe they were good enough to at least get an at-large. But I mean, this is a few years going now where these 25-year-old seniors aren't staying for their sixth year. Really, it's like their third year in school, but they're like 24. They're not sticking around, and BYU's having a hard time keeping their best players, and that's why they haven't made the NCAA tournament in a while. Between Eric Mika, Elijah Bryant, was there someone else too?
There was. I remember. I just don't remember who it was.
Yeah,
but that's a concern. I mean, absolutely. You have Gonzaga though, I assume.
Yep.
All right, Summit League. One quick shout out before I pick South Dakota State, which I'm going to do because Mike Daum and David Jenkins are probably just the two best players in the league. Nebraska Omaha had no preseason expectation whatsoever, and they've just found a way to be really competitive in always, I think, one of the more fun mid-major leagues in the country to watch. I mean, they're 13-3, and they were picked way at the bottom. I don't think anyone picked them over sixth. And I mean, they've just been on a roll. If they hadn't lost to Oral Roberts, they might have won the whole thing outright. I mean, Zach Jackson's a really nice guard. Mitch Hahn is a big who can pass, do a little bit of everything, step out and shoot threes. This is a good team. They don't turn it over at all.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of juice in the Summit this year. Where in previous years, you had South Dakota with Matt Mooney and Craig Smith as a coach. I mean, they were up there. You had North Dakota. You had some good teams. North Dakota State had a really strong run with Saul Phillips, so they had Parker Braun. But this year just feels like it's the South Dakota State and everyone else. I know Fort Wayne has John Conchar, who's a really high level player, but I think South Dakota State has the most juice, and they would make the best kind of NCAA tournament story. I'm going with them as well.
Speaking of Saul Phillips, that dude is toast at Ohio. Absolute toast. Because he's coaching on a lame duck contract, and they're 13-15. And that's a good job where people win. And so I think he's pretty much dead.
Maybe Jim Christian goes back there.
Jim Christian could be in the mix. I think
he should parachute out.
I'm thinking of some other names. Billy Donlin would be an interesting one there.
Yeah.
Yaklich would be right there. Dane Fife. Those are the names to watch, I think, at Ohio. Let's move on.
Another one to file away with the Brad Underwoods. Although Illinois turned around a little bit, but just perfect hire, but just not getting it done. I mean, North Dakota State was legitimately really, really good. They were like a 12 seed one year. I think played Oklahoma in the first round. I think that they even won a game. Maybe that was the year that they won a game in the NCAA tournament. But both North Dakota State and Ohio have gone south since, and looks like that was a real lose-lose situation. Yeah,
it happens. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Shaka, Underwood so far, although Underwood I think could turn it around. But yeah, it's always interesting. Horizon League. This is a tournament that I had no feel for other than, I just love John Brannon and I love Drew McDonald. And it's really hard for me to pick against a team that has the best player and the best coach in the conference. And I think that's what they have. Wright State's lurking. They struggled early in the year. They're playing a lot better of late. Green Bay has a lot of good guards. Detroit has Antoine Davis, who's fun, but I'm rolling with Northern Kentucky.
Yeah, I went with Wright State, repeat champs. I was struggling between the two top seeds, Northern Kentucky and Wright State. It is interesting in terms of Northern Kentucky how quickly they were able to transition, right? Because they were in the A-Sun for a couple of years, and then they go to a better conference in the Horizon, and then just right away moving up from Division II, they really take a stranglehold of that conference once Valpo and obviously Butler left a while ago. So that's super impressive rise, and John Brandon could easily be on a short list. Any Midwest or like Southern jobs.
Yeah, I think Virginia Tech, if they lose Buzz, would be very inclined to look at him. It'll be interesting. I mean, he's done a tremendous job. Helps they have great facilities and great commitment. Like, they want to be – like, my thing that's annoying when I watch, like, some of these teams transition up, like, I turned on a North Alabama game once this year, and I was like, they're playing in a high school gym. Like, and the coach they hired, like, I think they were asking, like, him to take a volunteer assistant as his third assistant. I know a few D1 teams do that, but, like, if you're jumping to D1, like, do it. Do what Cal Baptist did, do what Grand Canyon did, do what Northern Kentucky did. Have an arena, have a coach you believe in who has like actual experience in like coaching. Like, don't hire Tony Pujols. Like, just like be committed to being D1 or don't be D1.
You mean like what Bryant did? Bryant literally plays in a high school gym.
Oh yeah. Hey, Grasso's doing it until Manhattan fires Masiello and they hire Grasso. So that'll be a heartbreaker for Bryant. We'll see what happens.
I mean, that would be so funny. Bryant's patting themselves in the back for making the conference tournament.
They won 10 games. That's like triple their win
total. Not in the conference overall. Yeah,
triple their win total. Anyway,
they were good one year. They were in the CBI.
Yeah,
and then the bottom just fell out, probably because they had to recruit to that high school gym. And it's not in the middle of nowhere, like it's right off the highway, but there's certainly not a lot to do around there. I mean, Providence is only 15 minutes away, but
let's pick the NEC. It's good timing. I want to pick Grasso because I love that guy, but I don't think it's to be my champion. I think I'm going to go with Wagner. This has been kind of a weird year for Wagner. I think Bash Mason's a good coach who's been ousted a lot of times in the conference tournament where like they've had a good team. This year they're not quite as good. They're 8-10. They've lost 4 in a row, but I think they get hot. They go on the road to Fairleigh Dickinson. They start it up and they roll as a road dog the entire way through it. This is my out there pick, I think.
Yeah, I just love these top seeds. I'm going with St. Francis. Team that in the preseason, I thought that they would be a lot better, right? Because they're –
which St. Francis are you picking?
That's a good distinction. Pennsylvania, because like on like seedless and stuff, they're always like literally like number 68. I thought that they would be a little bit better, maybe like top 150, because they returned a lot from last year. But I was looking at their coach's resume earlier. Yeah, he's someone that's also kind of slowly and incrementally, improved that program and their standing in the conference. But the Nexa League that's been wiped out by up transfers, and kind of indicative of their talent level that they barely even have top 200 teams and are gonna be playing in Dayton without a doubt.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, and it's tough to build because there's a culture around it. Like, you see guys leave every year, and you want to do that too. If you're like Vado Morse right now at Mount St. Mary's, who just averaged 16 a game as a freshman, or you're Cameron Parker at Sacred Heart, who's been terrific, or Kareem Osier, 2 freshmen who've been terrific for that team this year, and you've seen Quincy McKnight and Kane Broom play and start on good teams, and you've seen, if you're Vado Morse at Mount St. Mary's, you've seen like Elijah Long and like go up, and Miles Wilson obviously get that chance in Miami before he blew it. Like Maudo Sala is like played at a better school and then grad transferred. It's like you've seen these guys move up, and so it's just so tantalizing.
And then Nizre Zazua has not worked out as well.
Not
and
at all.
Marcel Petway didn't even make it to Nevada.
Not at all.
But I mean, the up transfers that are successful, like your Kane Brooms, are going to be. I mean, he hasn't been as good as advertised, but he's certainly been successful. Those are going to stick with players more than the failures, right? Like they're going to see themselves as I'm going to be the next Kane Broom, or I'm going to be the next Rodney Pryor or Marcus Reed, right? I'm not going to be Marcel Petway, ending up going back to the MEAC, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, Patriot League. Got two more to get through. Patriot and America East. Patriot League, another league I have very little feel for. I trust Bucknell generally, but I got to roll with Colgate. I love Rappy Ivanowskis, the Northwestern transfer, great big man. Matt Langle's doing a really good job. They've got shooters. Jordan Burns, I believe is his name. Their point guard is pretty good. So I'm rolling with Colgate. I think they win this one, go to the NCAA tournament for the first time, and one of the first times in their program's history. It might be their first one. Let me look.
I'm going with Bucknell. I watched them absolutely, run through URI at the Diamond Head Classic over Christmas. We had talked about this at the time, but those Diamond Head games, stand alone. I'm optionally watching a Bucknell URI game right on TV. So it was a great stage, and Bucknell has some really good guards. Kimball McKenzie, right? Even though that they lost their two best players from last year, in Nana Fallon and Zach Thomas, they still are in the mix at the top of the league. I think that they still have the talent to pull this one off as the 3 seed.
Yeah, no doubt. I think they're right there. I think Colgate's right there. It's gonna be a fun little campus site tournament, which is always an interesting twist. And finally, America East. This is an interesting one because Vermont, I think, is a clear favorite. UMBC's lurking, who's beaten Vermont twice already this year. Do they have their number? Stony Brook is a good club. Also, don't sleep on Albany, who's really young and starting to play a lot better of late, and Hartford, who's seniors. That said, I mean, this is kind of a spot where you could go value in the Jerome and try to get a non-top seed. But I would say, I think Vermont's going to do it at home. John Becker's really good. Anthony Lamb really good. I think they do it.
Yeah, I also went with Vermont. I mean, just another team that's churning out great teams. Right? They lose Trey Bell-Haynes and Peyton Henson, and while they take a step back, they're still good enough to be the class of the America East. And Stony Brook had those great wins. Kind of name brand wins early in the season over URI and South Carolina, but both teams weren't as good as people thought. Still a very good team, but I'm going with Vermont in this one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think
and also, I mean, I don't hate the American East time slot at 11 a.m. on the Saturday, but why do they spread out so much, right? I mean, Monday only has 2, right? Monday has the SoCon and the CAA. Throw another tournament on Monday.
Yeah, I mean that's the challenge is just when can they time up their tournaments like especially the campus side ones, they just take longer. I know the MAC is moving because they're going to Atlantic City. They're have to move theirs to the champ weekend, the weekend of Selection Sunday is when they're doing it now. So we're losing one of the good Monday night ones.
There's just too many on it.
I know, it's annoying. I'm not a fan.
The Big West is okay because that's a midnight tip, right? The WAC is late too, but I mean, and then they do a good job of kind of hiding the SWAC and the MEAC. Those
yes
during the semifinals finals of the Big East and stuff. But we got to spread it out more, especially on that Thursday and Friday. Give me the the Mountain West Championship on that Thursday that I could watch over the 2-7 game in the Big East tournament.
Agreed. Anyway, those are our picks. Hope you enjoyed them. We'll have more next week. It's gonna be a really fun week. I'm gonna be out in Indianapolis, covering Northwestern women's basketball for as long as they're out there, and I'll be at home in a bunker watching as much mid-major conference tournaments as I can. So enjoy that. I'm sure you all, as fans of this podcast, can appreciate a good UNC Asheville versus Campbell game, and I hope you watch as many of them as you can. Enjoy March, and good night.